My audio cut out halfway through recording this, so I'm re-recording it. And this time, I'm not going to rerun all the LLM queries, so it'll run a bit faster, and I can just quickly talk through what actually happened. And at the end, I'll start running I'll rerun the last ones, so you can see them in real time. So the background here is that I created a website, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, perhaps. This is the website here. It was when I was working as a fractional CTO. I haven't changed it in any way for years, other than to post some extra links in the recent talks section and one or two in the articles section. It's a WordPress site, so posting new articles is fairly effortless. But this design is horrible, it's ugly. It was something I threw together very quickly originally just to get something up and running, and I haven't touched it. And it's long overdue being updated and turned into something decent, and also updated to reflect what I currently do these days, which is significantly different. So I went to ChatGPT, and I won't go through the details of how I got there on this, but I had a whole process I went through with having ChatGPT act as a consultant and a marketing person and a copywriter. And between us, we generated a whole load of copy for different ways this needs to change, this website, including rewriting the linked pages like the About page and the Contact page. And then at the end, we ended up with a summary of all the changes to the content and then some details about actual copy that it wants to replace. So that's what I'm starting from. I've got this kind of slightly scatterbrained, high level, this is what we're going to change. So to turn this into a new actual layout, well, I want to throw away this whole design here. I want to first of all switch to having a wireframe. So look at where all the different blocks of content are going to be on screen, relative sizes, shapes, what's above the fold, what's below the fold, etc. So I start with the mess of text I've got, and first of all we're going to chunk it. So we use Markdown format, which are these, to say a subheading. This is recommended by OpenAI because they found it particularly good with the GPT LLMs, and we just describe what each of these sections were. So this one was, this is the ideal customer profile. The next one was typical personas, typical visitor personas. I'm just re-summarizing these by, from what I remember what the conversation was about, and then glancing at the content and being like, oh yes, I remember what that was. So this was, I think, use structure. It actually doesn't matter so much what subtitles you give it, as that you actually give it any subtitle. Subpages linked from main page. And what have we got next? Oh yeah, and new content summaries. This is just a list of all the new content. That's it. So I copy and pasted that into ChatGPT. I started with 4.0 just as a default. And I put, I've redesigned this website. Here's all the new copy. Now create wireframes for the new site design. And then I just copy and pasted in that whole document I showed you. What does ChatGPT produce? Well, it starts talking. I don't really care about the words. I just want the image. And then it starts doing a textual description of a wireframe, which is about the most useless thing you could possibly imagine. Yeah, useless. I just went visual layout for desktop. Ah, right, a visual layout. And oh my word, it tries to, I mean, who knows what it's trying to do here? It's horrendous. So, okay, draw it as an image. Finally, we get an image. You can't really see that, but I downloaded, I know that was its first take. Yeah, so this image here is terrible. And this is the kind of thing I normally get from ChatGPT when you ask it for wireframes or visualizations, etc. It has a habit of doing these very linear, direct item, very low quality and useless. This bit output in your layout, I was like, well, okay, what if I use O3, which Glenn was recommending the other day? So I just then said, basically do it again, but with O3. And this time round, we get something, I think the first one, it didn't work. Oh yeah, so the first one, it basically just reproduced the same thing, and I suspected that was because it was riffing off the one it had already got. So I said, no, I need an attractive one with intelligent use of space. So this time O3 actually then started to do some actual wireframing and using horizontal space as well as vertical space. But this is still pretty dire. You can't, I mean, having an area, this testimonial slider area in the middle, and what's in there? Which copy? And it's way too vague and non-specific and hard to work with. So I didn't really like that. So then I went to Claude, and we went with Sonnet 4 down here, and I started with this preamble. So this time I thought, okay, I'll give it a bit more preamble. We're redesigning a promotional website for an independent consultant. This is just describing what was happening. Review the content and create a visual wireframe image to show how the different content blocks could be positioned attractively. You could say I learned from my mistakes, ChatGPT. However, I actually used this same header with GPT 4.0 again, and found that I basically got the same results as the original crappy, where is it? This thing here. So this header may help, but it didn't help for ChatGPT. And then I again copy and pasted in the original big lengthy thing. Claude goes on talking for a bit, and then it comes out and goes, oh, I'll create these wireframes. And we get these cute little ASCII diagrams, which is great. They're quite nice, they're quite easy to read and work with. But the problem with an ASCII diagram is text. If this is a whole web page here, this text here is a massive font size compared to that screen size. So while this looks cute in ASCII, it doesn't really reflect anything like the actual web page design. So it's not very useful. It is useful for me to be able to see quickly that it's got this style versus that style, or this third final style, which looks horrible in ASCII, but maybe looks good in a real design. So, not impressed. So these are okay, but make poor use of screen real estate. And I gave an example of one of the most famous overused WordPress theme designs, which is 3 side-by-side images and a paragraph of each. And I said, I wasn't sure how I didn't want to constrain Claude. I wanted to let it decide how to render this. So I said, consider using SVG or Mermaid to show a wireframe. It goes, okay, I'll use SVG. And it starts spitting out this massive SVG code, which obviously no one is ever going to read. Look at that. But what I did, I only wrote one of them. So I asked it to do the layouts for the other two. So there's 3 things here. And when I tried to render them, the second one failed. I found Claude almost always gets this wrong with Sonnet 4. If there is an ampersand anywhere in the website content, it dumps that ampersand into SVG without escaping it. And it correctly spots that it's put in an ampersand when in SVG that has to be ampersand amp semicolon. So it redoes this. Right, now, what does that produce? So I opened this in a separate window. We get this, which is in some ways not that different from what ChatGPT produced, but it's much easier to work with, much easier to see the layout, think about it, and it's got some of the actual copy in here that it's taken from the text I gave it. Now this is its second layout. You may recognize from the original ASCII diagrams that these relate to the differences. And this one's even better. You can actually clearly see the bullet points that I'd given it in the original input. And then the third layout, it ended up doing completely differently and actually somewhat nicer than it had tried to do in ASCII. And obviously these colored blocks are just color coding to help with reading the wireframe. So then I went, okay, that's going so well, I'm going to give it some feedback. And I told it bits I liked, bits I didn't like. I said, without redrawing the layout, consider the fact. So I didn't want it to just immediately change it. I wanted it to actually go and do some internal processing about the textual feedback here, act as a designer. And then after that, and I also had some extra piece of data that I'd had from the original conversation that went into more detail on some of the Y of the copy was in there. So I gave it that extra stuff here as this copy pasted thing. I was like, okay, it's doing so well, let's see how far it can go. It wrote all this text, I don't care about it, but more importantly, told it to create a new SVG using the new copy. So here's the new SVG. And that gave us, where is it? Here. So now we've got starting to get quite a useful, and I did another variant with it. So we're starting to get useful with actual details of the copy in there. Really quite good stuff. But then because I had a problem with my audio and I retried it, I redid this all with Sonnet, but this time round I made one small mistake. So one more small different. Because I knew it was going to do good SVGs, I said output SVGs for a couple of possible layouts. And I was feeling too lazy to redo the whole thing. I just copy and pasted in basically from the start of this prompt at the very top here. Just basically copy and pasted all that in here with very small changes to the text. And so this time it created an SVG straight away. And you notice this time it's actually done syntax highlighting, color coding, which is interesting, but okay, fine. And oh, it got very lazy. To save Anthropic money, it cut off halfway through a file. So I had to tell it to continue. So it did that. And of course, one of the pages had the ampersand error. So I had to give it a chance to do that, fix that. Makes this big SVG file. So with that done, what does it output? Well, this is where it gets quite interesting. We got this. This is SVG. This is not, oh no, sorry, this isn't SVG. This is the post SVG thing. Here's the SVG. Here's the SVG it made. This is not a website or a web page. This is not HTML. This is all SVG. But because it's SVG, it's actual text. You can copy paste it. That's not a link. It couldn't be a link because it's only an SVG file. That's not a video. That's just a triangle it has visually drawn over the top. This is excellent. I'm not commenting on whether I like the design or not, but I can see very clearly what it has done. And I was then like, well, okay, this is so good. I want to do two things. Well, I want to do three things, really. I want to actually build this as a website front page. So I'm going to take a step sideways for a moment here. Here's the website. What happens if I try to edit it? It's WordPress, so I get this. And this is WordPress's custom visual editor, which is full of bugs, has enormous problems, is very hard to control, and it's horrendous to work with. Now, having used WordPress over the years, I am well aware that the correct way in WordPress to make a single custom page is to write a new PHP file and do everything in raw text and raw coding, which is, again, a nightmare to work with. And WordPress has never updated that system. You can kind of sort of modify it in this visual stuff, but for a single custom page, it doesn't really work. Most of the features of WordPress are disabled. And what you're expected to do is go and spend money buying third-party plugins. That's a lot of effort, it's a lot of hassle, and then it's a huge maintenance burden for all the security holes in all the plugins you used. But what I was aware of as well is that WordPress in the last 4 or 5 years created a new system for making their whole plugin architecture, their whole plugin interface for controlling site admin, special features, and so on. It has an alternate way of working, which is instead of loading PHP files, it's all using React and TypeScript. And it uses React and TypeScript for rendering the admin interface now. And in fact, for this WYSIWYG, it's all rendered by React, even though it's then reading from 20 years old PHP to generate it. So I went to ChatGPT and said, look, I want to make a custom WordPress plugin using React or TypeScript. And it could be done by using a single PHP file, but that's a pain. It'd be much easier to create a custom plugin that renders React, and then I can make changes through a React UI in the WP admin site. Actually, this bit is a lie. That when I thought about it, this is never going to happen. I'm not building a custom editor here. So I just said, look, ChatGPT, let me know whether this is really possible and how you would do it. And it usefully picks up on the key elements of how we're going to pull this off. One of the key ones to me that I hadn't asked it, but I did need to know is, how is the React side actually edited and made? And it came back with, well, you just make a Webpack file. So classic, straightforward React. And then nicely, it came up with the structure. That's not the important bit. The really important bit is down here somewhere. Yeah, here you go. So summary of key file structure. So it shows you which bits are going to be a PHP file. You do need a simple, almost empty PHP file to bridge between the PHP part of WordPress and the React parts. And then where you're going to put your React app, where it's going to output to, and so on. And then I did actually a longer conversation where I asked it for more specifics, and it actually came up with the details of all the individual files that WordPress needs. But that's off topic. We're not going to need that right now. So we know we're going to build this as a WordPress, a React app. And from what ChatGPT is suggesting here, and this does fit with what I expected, we can just build that as a standalone React app and then add a few bits on the side to turn it into a WordPress front page. So we've got these various designs. We've got that need. How are we going to do this? My favorite way is I can just get Cursor to do nearly all the work. So actually, no, we'll just start in this project. So fire up Cursor and wait for Cursor to load. This is where I'm going to start using the LLMs again, so you can see how easy this is to do, even if you've got no coding experience. This involves mostly ignoring what goes on in the main Cursor window. So Cursor fires up. Because I'm not insane, I'm using Devcontainers. Everyone should. I'm going to need a folder for the dev container, aren't I? So let's just call it project. Right, so if you don't know what dev containers are, that is a whole separate thing I will go into later. Why? Sorry, Cursor has now decided no. I think Cursor started out creating a default dev container in the local thing. I've never seen it do that before. Great, so here's a new bug in Cursor that it's broken dev containers today. This didn't happen an hour ago, it didn't happen yesterday. We are going to make a new folder, I hate Cursor today. By doing this, Cursor will actually should load a completely separate configuration. All right, so I've got blank configuration. And I'm going to make a folder. Sorry. So that I can use the dev container feature, open. Why is open folder in container not working? What it's doing is it's trying to reopen the current folder in a container, which is this option, which is a completely different feature and shouldn't do this. I'm going to give up and run with it and see what it does, because I'm not in the mood for fighting Cursor bugs today. And it's done something completely useless and weird. Okay, I'm going to stop here. I'll record this as a separate video when I have deleted Cursor and reinstalled an old version that is not broken. However, the output of what then happens is we ask Cursor to, we need to take this output, or where's it gone? Where's the nice website I had? It's one of these. well, so we either need to take it in this raw form here, the SVG, or we need to take the rendered form like this and get that into Cursor and say to Cursor, right, now, so this is just SVG, it's not web, it's not HTML. Convert this into an actual HTML and ideally convert it into React. And I tried that 3 ways. So the first way was I took a screenshot of this whole page. I actually zoomed it out a lot so I could fit it into one window like this, took a screenshot, gave that to Cursor, just copy and pasted the screenshot into Cursor and said, create this website as a React website using Webpack. And it worked, and it worked perfectly. I thought, okay, what if I give it the actual SVG? So then I did a version where I gave it a copy and paste of the SVG straight out of Claude here. And that also worked. Cursor correctly interpreted, or the LLM cursors using correctly interpreted all the SVG visually and rendered a perfectly accurate web page. It in fact looks so similar. I think I've got it open somewhere. Let me just check. Yeah. So this is where so this is the version. This is the actual. I've got this running in a different container. This is the actual version that Cursor produced from a screenshot. It was a slightly different screenshot, but almost the same. And this is a web thing. So these are links because these are actual code, and this has all been done in React. The second one, oh, this isn't going to load. That was cached. So the second one was it did by reading the SVG, but again, it looked almost identical to this. And the third one, I actually asked, where is it? Claude. I asked Claude to output React itself. So here you go. I said, I pretended we have a project. Take your layout to and write a standalone React component that expresses it. I wanted to make this into a single file, which isn't how I would normally do it. It's not good practice, but I just wanted in a convenient way with a single use of this copy button to translate all the data from Claude into Cursor. So I said, all contained in a single file, but with subcomponents, React subcomponents for different parts. So it's built a header, it's built a hero section here, and you see it's built all the different sections, and then at the end, I think it pulls. Yeah, at the end, it pulls it together into a single page, which uses all of the separate components it's created earlier in the file. And so that single file, I hit copy. I put this into Cursor earlier, and the output I got was this one, which again just worked. Now this one actually worked somewhat nicer. So take homes from this. One, if you're going to generate the images, the wireframe in the LLM, the nicest output of all is if you ask it to generate the React components, because it's got the benefit of all the context and the background of why it had that layout and so on. So it's more likely to do things like choose nice colors for these bullet points and to do standouts of these things here. However, other take-homes, even the basic default free LLM built into Cursor can interpret an SVG in raw text as a visual image, and it gets it completely right. And that same thing can also, the Cursor's default basic LLM can interpret a screenshot version. So this is the actual Cursor version. So it's reactive web. So that's why as I resize the page, it's actually everything's resizing smoothly and changing its shape. But that was taken from this raw SVG, which I just resized the SVG image and copy and pasted that as a screenshot in. And the other key bits are, where are we? I've lost my ChatGPT window. Yeah, no, not this one. ChatGPT, even in 03, did a terrible job. From what I've seen of Glenn's work, you can get 03 to do actually quite nice layouts. They'll look a bit like this, but they can look a lot better. I am going to go back and play with this and see if I can get GPT-03 to produce something decent. But at the moment, my preferred route going forward is, for now, is use your preferred LLM to generate all the copy and the text, then copy and paste that into Claude and straight off say output SVGs. Because if you let it make its own mind up, you get this somewhat uglier rendering from Claude, which is okay, it's functional, but I find it easier to work with the more closer to the final accurate copy here. It lets me visualize better what I'm looking at. And then, of course, as fast as possible, once this is decent and I've gone through a couple of iterations of Claude, dump it into, or even just straight away, dump it into Cursor, which is misbehaving today, where I can then edit it as an actual web page. And that's where we'll stop.